Emma was a young mother who loved her baby daughter Lily more than anything else in the world. Lily had just turned 6 months old, and every little giggle, every small movement, and even her soft cries filled Emma's heart with joy. Life felt different now, fuller and warmer because of the little one who had brought so much light into her days. Emma often sat for hours just watching Lily sleep, amazed that such a tiny person could have such a big place in her heart. Alongside her love for Lily, there was also Max, her German shepherd. Max had been with Emma long before Lily was born. He was more than a pet. He was her companion, her protector, and in many ways, her best friend. When Emma was expecting, people around her had raised doubts. They told her that having a big dog and a baby under the same roof might be dangerous. Some even suggested she should think about giving Max away, but Emma had refused. She trusted Max, and she believed that deep down, he would love Lily just as much as she did. Still, Emma couldn't help but carry a little worry in the back of her mind. Max had been the center of her attention for years, and now there was Lily. Would Max feel replaced? Would he become jealous of the baby? These thoughts sometimes made her anxious, even though Max had never shown any sign of unkindness. Every time she placed Lily near him, Max would simply sit close by, his eyes calm, his ears alert, as if he knew his role had changed. He was no longer just Emma's dog. He had become the quiet guardian of the smallest member of the family. It was an ordinary afternoon when the story began. The sun shone through the windows of their cozy living room, casting golden light across the floor. Lily lay on a soft blanket with little toys scattered around her. She was at that playful age where she liked to kick her legs, wave her tiny hands, and grab anything within reach. Her innocent laughter filled the room every time one of the colorful toys made a small sound. Emma sat nearby, smiling as she watched her daughter's happiness. Max lay stretched out a few feet away, his head resting on his front paws. His eyes, however, were never closed for long. He seemed to drift between rest and alertness, always ready to respond if needed. Emma often noticed how Max would glance at Lily whenever she made a sound, his ears twitching, his gaze steady, almost as if he was studying every movement. There was something reassuring in that. Emma realized she needed to fetch a bottle from the kitchen. It was just a short walk away, and she thought to herself, it will only take a few seconds. She had done it before, leaving Lily on the blanket while she stepped into the kitchen. Each time she told herself she would be quick, just long enough to grab what she needed and return. She looked at Max lying nearby, then at her baby who was happily gurgling at her toys, and she felt confident it was safe. "Stay close, Max," Emma said softly, as if giving him a task he already understood. The German shepherd raised his head slightly, his dark eyes watching her before lowering it back down. Emma walked into the kitchen, her mind only on the bottle. She hummed quietly to herself, trying to be quick so she wouldn't leave Lily for too long. But in the back of her mind, she knew that even though it was just a short moment, mothers often worry. She had read countless articles about how accidents happen in seconds, and she never wanted to take chances. Suddenly, she heard Max move. It wasn't the soft sound of him shifting his position. It was the quick, sharp sound of his claws pressing against the wooden floor. Her heart skipped a beat. Emma froze for half a second, then hurried to grab the bottle and rushed back toward the living room. In that brief walk back, her mind raced. Why had Max moved so suddenly? Was he reacting to something Lily did? Was he perhaps being too rough in his curiosity? The warnings she had heard from people before rushed back into her head. Big dogs and babies don't mix. You can never really trust them. What if one day he snaps? Emma's pulse quickened as these thoughts swirled in her mind. When she stepped back into the room, she stopped in her tracks. The scene before her wasn't what she had expected. Max was no longer lying calmly on the floor. Instead, he stood right next to Lily's blanket, his large body towering protectively over the baby. His ears were pointed forward, his posture stiff, and his eyes were locked on something Emma couldn't see at first. Lily, lying beneath him, didn't seem scared at all. She looked curious, waving her little hands as if she sensed something unusual. For a brief moment, Emma's breath caught in her throat. To any mother, seeing a big dog hovering over her small baby could trigger fear, but Emma knew Max's body language well. This wasn't aggression toward Lily, it was focus on something else. The air in the room felt different, tense, like something was about to happen. Emma's eyes quickly scanned the room, trying to understand what Max had noticed. The sunlight had shifted and shadows played along the floor. That's when she saw a small movement near the edge of the blanket. At first, she thought it was just a toy rolling out of place, but then she realized it wasn't. Her stomach dropped. Something thin and dark slithered near the blanket, barely a few inches away from Lily's tiny foot. It was a small garden snake, its body twisting as it moved silently across the floor. Emma felt a chill rush through her. The back door had been left slightly open earlier to let in fresh air, and it must have slipped inside. Emma's first instinct was to scream, but she bit her lip. She didn't want to startle Lily, and she didn't want to distract Max. In that moment, she understood why he had moved so quickly. Max had sensed the danger before she had, and now he was standing guard, his body forming a protective wall between the baby and the snake. Emma clutched the bottle in her hand, frozen in place for a second longer. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, every beat loud in her ears. Her mind screamed for her to act, but her eyes stayed fixed on Max and Lily. The German Shepherd didn't move an inch from his position. His head was low, his gaze sharp, his body tensed like a soldier ready to defend. Emma finally took a deep breath. She realized this moment would test her trust, both in herself as a mother and in Max as a protector. She had always believed he loved Lily, but now she was about to see if that love was strong enough to protect her baby from harm, and it had all happened in just a few seconds, the kind of seconds that felt like hours when fear was involved. Emma had left the room for the shortest time, and in that time her world shifted. She was no longer just a mother with her baby and her dog. She was a witness to something unfolding, something that could have been dangerous, but also something that might prove the loyalty of her beloved companion in the most powerful way possible. Emma's heart pounded as she stood at the doorway, frozen, watching Max. The German Shepherd remained perfectly still, his body tense, his eyes never leaving the little snake that had slithered dangerously close to Lily's blanket. It was as if time itself had slowed down. The air felt heavy, the kind of silence that holds both fear and anticipation. Lily, innocent and unaware, simply gurgled and reached for one of her toys, her tiny fingers brushing against the soft fabric beside her. Emma wanted to act, but her legs felt rooted to the ground. She had never faced something like this before. She had dealt with baby cries in the middle of the night. She had handled sleepless mornings, and she had faced the doubts of being a new mother. But this was different. This was a direct danger, and her baby was lying helpless, with only Max standing between Lily and the slithering threat. She thought back to all the times people had questioned her decision to keep Max in the house after Lily was born. Friends had warned her, family had worried. "You never know with dogs," one relative had said, "especially with babies. They're too fragile." Emma had listened politely, but deep down she believed that Max was different. She had raised him since he was a pup, trained him, cared for him, and loved him. She trusted him with her heart. But at that moment, with a snake just inches away from her child, her belief was being tested in the most unexpected way. Max let out a low growl, a deep sound that made Emma's skin prickle. He didn't lunge, didn't snap, but the sound was enough to make the snake pause for a brief second. The reptile lifted its small head, tongue flicking in and out, tasting the air. It was almost as if it was deciding whether to continue its path or retreat. Emma's breath caught. Every second felt longer than it really was. She stepped forward slowly, not wanting to startle either Max or the snake. Her mind raced with options. Should she grab Lily first? But if she rushed in, what if she startled the snake and it moved toward her baby? Should she try to call Max away? No, that would be the worst idea. Max was focused, and Emma realized his instincts were sharper than hers in that moment. She needed to trust him. Her fingers tightened around the bottle she still held in her hand. It felt almost silly, holding that small object while a real danger crawled across her living room floor. She wished she had something stronger, something to push the snake away immediately. But all she had was her trust in herself and in Max. Lily let out a soft coo, completely unaware of the tension around her. The sound seemed to renew Max's determination. He shifted his weight slightly, his body lowering as if ready to strike, but still careful not to touch Lily. Emma could see the love and loyalty in his posture. He wasn't just reacting like a dog, he was protecting like a family member. Emma felt her fear turn into focus. She carefully set the bottle down on a nearby table and took another step closer. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for something she could use. Her gaze landed on a broom leaning against the wall. It wasn't much, but it was something. She moved toward it quietly, her steps careful, her eyes darting between Max and the snake. As she reached for the broom, she heard Max's growl deepen. The snake had started moving again, inching closer, weaving its thin body over the edge of the blanket. Emma's heart skipped as she realized just how close it was now. She tightened her grip on the broomstick, her palms sweaty, but before she could act, Max lowered his head and let out a bark. It wasn't loud and frantic like the playful barks he sometimes used outside. This was sharp, controlled, commanding, the kind of bark that seemed to shake the room. The snake froze, its tiny body stiff. For the first time, Emma noticed something remarkable. Max wasn't just scaring the snake, he was carefully controlling his energy. His bark was strong enough to warn, but not so loud that it would terrify Lily. Even in that tense moment, he thought of the baby. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. She had always believed Max was special, but this moment proved it. He wasn't just acting out of instinct. He was acting with thought, with care. He was watching over Lily the way a parent would. Emma raised the broom, her hands trembling slightly. She didn't want to hurt the snake, but she wanted it far away from her baby. She took a step forward, and Max glanced back at her for the briefest second. That glance felt like a silent agreement, a message that said, "I've got this, but it's your move now." Taking a deep breath, Emma extended the broomstick toward the snake. She nudged the floor near it, not hitting, but guiding, trying to push it back the way it came. The snake flicked its tongue again, confused by the movement, and turned slightly away from the blanket. Max didn't relax, but his body shifted just enough to give Emma room. The snake began to slither toward the open back door, and Emma moved carefully, her broom following behind it, urging it out. Max followed with his eyes, every muscle in his body still tense, his body angled in front of Lily like a living shield. Finally, the snake slipped out through the gap in the door and disappeared into the garden. Emma quickly kicked the door shut, her chest heaving with relief. She lowered the broom and leaned against the wall for a moment, feeling the adrenaline rushing through her. Max let out a short huff and turned his head toward Lily. He sniffed the baby gently, as if checking to make sure she was safe. Then, with the danger gone, he sat down next to her blanket, his posture finally relaxing. Lily giggled, reaching for his fur, completely unbothered by what had just happened. Emma slowly walked over and sank to her knees beside them. She picked Lily up into her arms, holding her close, breathing in the sweet baby scent that always calmed her heart. She looked at Max, her loyal friend, and whispered, "Good boy." Her voice trembled, but it carried more love and gratitude than ever before. She realized just how close things had come. A few seconds could have changed everything. But because of Max, her baby was safe. Emma's doubts melted away in that moment. All the warnings, all the worries, all the questions others had planted in her mind, they didn't matter anymore. She had seen the truth with her own eyes. Max wasn't just a dog. He was Lily's protector, her silent guardian. As Emma sat on the floor holding her baby and watching Max rest beside them, she knew this was a story she would never forget. It was frightening, yes, but also beautiful, because in those seconds of fear, she had witnessed the strength of loyalty, the power of love, and the unbreakable bond between her child and her dog. And it all happened in the blink of an eye, when she thought she had only stepped away for a few seconds. Emma sat quietly on the floor, holding Lily close while Max rested nearby. The living room felt calm again, but the memory of what had just happened was fresh in her mind. Her heart was still beating fast, and her hands trembled slightly as she stroked Lily's soft hair. She glanced at Max, who was now lying down but still kept his eyes fixed on the back door, as if making sure the snake would not return. His chest rose and fell steadily, yet the sharpness in his gaze showed he was alert, even in rest. The baby, in her mother's arms, reached out toward Max with a tiny giggle. Emma couldn't help but smile through her unease. Lily had no idea that she had just been protected from danger. To her, Max was simply the big furry friend she loved to touch and smile at. That innocence brought Emma both comfort and a stronger sense of responsibility. It reminded her that it was her job to make sure Lily never faced harm, and yet today, she had seen that Max shared that job in his own way. As she rocked Lily gently, Emma thought about how quickly the entire scene had unfolded. Just seconds had made the difference. She had only gone into the kitchen for a short moment, but in that time, everything had changed. It left her with a swirl of emotions: fear, relief, gratitude, and awe. She couldn't stop replaying the sight of Max standing tall, his body like a wall between the baby and the snake. When her neighbor, Mrs. Collins, came to check on her later that afternoon, Emma told her what had happened. Mrs. Collins was an older woman who had lived next door for years. She loved Max, but often reminded Emma to be cautious about leaving a large dog with the baby. When she heard the story, her eyes widened in surprise. "Good heavens, Emma," Mrs. Collins said, placing her hand over her chest. "That dog of yours is no ordinary pet. He's a guardian angel in disguise." Emma chuckled softly, though her voice was still shaky. "That's exactly how it felt. He knew something was wrong before I even realized." Mrs. Collins bent down to pat Max on the head. He accepted the gentle touch with calm dignity, his tail wagging only once before he returned his focus to Lily. It was as if he knew he had earned respect and didn't need praise to prove his loyalty. That evening, after Lily was asleep in her crib, Emma sat on the couch with Max curled up at her feet. She leaned back and thought deeply. For so long she had worried about how Max and Lily would get along. She had read countless articles online, some full of warnings, others filled with heartwarming stories of dogs bonding with babies. But no article could have prepared her for this real-life moment. She reached down and stroked Max's fur gently. "I'll never doubt you again," she whispered. "You're part of this family, and you've shown it in the most powerful way." Max lifted his head slightly, gave her hand a soft nudge with his nose, and then rested again. The next day, Emma called her parents to share the story. Her mother, who had always been cautious about Max, listened carefully. "Emma," she said, "I used to worry that your dog might not understand the baby, but now I see he does. He's protective, just like a big brother." Emma smiled at the description. It felt true. Max wasn't just a pet anymore. He was something more. He had stepped into a role that no one had asked him to play, but one he had chosen himself. Over the following days, Emma noticed even more about the bond between Lily and Max. Wherever Lily was placed, Max always positioned himself nearby. If she was in her crib, he lay by the door. If she was on her playmate, he rested beside it. His eyes followed her every movement, and though he never interfered, he was always there. One morning, Emma set Lily in her high chair by the kitchen window while she prepared breakfast. Lily was playing with a rattle, and Max sat close by, his head resting on his paws. A sudden noise outside, a delivery truck pulling into the street, made Max lift his head instantly. His ears stood tall, his body alert. Lily dropped her toy and laughed at the sound, completely unbothered. Emma realized again how differently they experienced the world. To Lily, everything was new and exciting. To Max, everything was a potential threat or a moment that required his attention. Emma began to see her dog in a new light. She had always known he was intelligent and loyal, but now she understood the depth of his awareness. He wasn't just reacting randomly. He was making decisions. He was choosing when to step forward and when to stay calm. One afternoon, Emma's friend Claire came over with her little boy, who was a year older than Lily. The children played together on the rug while the mothers chatted. Claire noticed Max lying near the children and raised her eyebrows. "You really trust him, don't you?" Claire asked. Emma smiled, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "More than ever. He saved Lily from a snake the other day. He didn't let it get near her." Claire's eyes widened in shock. "A snake? Are you serious?" Emma nodded, her hand gently resting on Max's back. He didn't hesitate for a second. He knew exactly what to do. Claire looked at the dog, her expression changing from cautious to respectful. "Well, I guess he proved himself. Not every dog would react like that." Emma leaned back, watching the children play. "He's part of our family. He doesn't just live here, he protects us." That night, as Emma put Lily to bed, she thought about how motherhood was full of lessons. Every day brought something new. New joys, new challenges, new surprises. But this experience with Max had taught her one of the biggest lessons of all. Trust can sometimes come from the most unexpected places. She looked at Max lying near the crib, his eyes half closed but still keeping watch. She whispered softly, "Thank you, my boy. You've shown me that love doesn't need words. It shows itself in actions." As the days turned into weeks, Emma noticed how Lily's bond with Max grew naturally. Whenever Lily reached out her small hands, Max would lower his head gently so she could touch his fur. If she laughed, his ears perked up as if he was listening to music. If she cried, he moved closer, staying near until she calmed. It was a quiet partnership, unspoken but clear. Emma realized that what had happened that day was not just about a snake. It was about the beginning of a lifelong connection. Lily would grow up with a friend who had already proven his loyalty. And Emma, as a mother, had learned that sometimes trust is not about ignoring fear, but about seeing the truth through actions. The moment that had shocked her so deeply was slowly transforming into a story of comfort, a reminder that she was not alone in protecting her daughter. She had a partner silent but strong, always by her side. And from that day on, she never again doubted Max's place in their family. The weeks that followed seemed calmer, but Emma often found herself thinking back to that one moment when Max had stood like a soldier in front of Lily. Every time she replayed the scene in her mind, she felt both a shiver and a wave of gratitude. What could have turned into a nightmare had instead become a memory of loyalty and protection. Emma started to notice the little things Max did that she had overlooked before. When she laid Lily on her playmate, Max would always circle the area once before lying down, as if checking that everything was safe. When someone rang the doorbell, he would rush to the door and stand firmly, his bark deep and commanding until Emma told him it was all right. Even at night, when the house was quiet, Max often slept near Lily's crib, his ears twitching at the smallest sound. One evening, Emma invited her sister Hannah to stay over. Hannah was younger, full of energy, and she adored Lily. But she was also one of the people who had worried the most about Max being around the baby. "I love dogs," Hannah had always said, "but you just never know. They can be unpredictable." That night, as Lily lay giggling in her crib and Max rested nearby, Hannah watched them closely. "He's really glued to her, isn't he?" she asked with a small laugh. Emma smiled. "He doesn't leave her side. Not even for a moment." Hannah tilted her head, her expression softening as she studied Max. "I can see it in his eyes. He's watching her like she's his responsibility." Emma nodded. "That's exactly what it feels like." Later, as the two sisters sat in the living room, Hannah admitted, "I was wrong. I thought you were being risky keeping such a big dog with the baby. But now I get it. He's not just a dog, he's family." Emma felt her chest warm at the words. It was comforting to hear her sister say it, because it showed that others could see what she already knew deep down. The bond between Lily and Max grew stronger each day. When Lily began crawling, Max followed her carefully, always keeping a respectful distance. If she headed toward the coffee table or tried to pull herself up against the couch, Max was there, his big body ready to steady her if she stumbled. Sometimes Emma laughed, saying, "You're like her shadow, Max." One afternoon, Emma took Lily and Max out into the garden to enjoy the fresh air. Lily sat on a blanket under the shade of a tree playing with a small stuffed bear. Max lay beside her watching birds that flew across the sky. Everything was peaceful until the sound of footsteps came from the sidewalk. A stranger had wandered into the front gate, looking around as if confused. Emma felt uneasy. She hadn't invited anyone, and it wasn't common for strangers to walk into her yard. She stood up, holding Lily close. Before she could even say a word, Max was on his feet, standing tall, his chest broad, his eyes sharp and focused on the man. "Whoa," the stranger said quickly, raising his hands. "I didn't mean to scare anyone. I'm just looking for an address." Emma calmed slightly, realizing the man wasn't a direct threat, but she couldn't help but notice how Max reacted. His bark was steady, not wild, but clear enough to let the man know he wasn't welcome until Emma said otherwise. After giving directions politely, Emma watched the stranger leave. Max stayed alert until the man was completely out of sight. Only then did he relax, returning to Lily's side and lying down again. Emma's heart swelled with pride. "You're not only her guardian inside the house," she whispered. "You're her protector everywhere." The incident with the stranger reminded Emma again how much she relied on Max, even when she didn't realize it. She no longer thought of him as just her pet. He was her partner in raising Lily. She began to feel that Max had a wisdom of his own, a kind of quiet understanding that didn't need words. One morning, Emma took Lily to the park. The grassy area was filled with other families, children playing and dogs running happily with their owners. Emma spread a blanket on the ground and placed Lily on it. Max sat nearby, his leash wrapped around Emma's wrist. A little boy toddled over, curious about Lily. He held out a toy car, offering it with a smile. Lily clapped her hands, delighted. Emma watched warmly, But she also noticed how Max's head lifted, his eyes following the boy carefully. He didn't growl or bark, but he shifted his body slightly closer to Lily, as if making a line of safety between her and the world. The boy's mother hurried over and apologized, but Emma shook her head with a smile. "It's fine. They're just curious about each other." Still, Emma noticed how Max never let his guard down. Even in a friendly place like the park, he kept watch. He understood in his own way that Lily depended on him. That night, when Emma tucked Lily into bed, she thought about how much life had changed. She had once worried about whether Max would accept the baby. Now she realized the question had been answered in the most powerful way possible. Not only had he accepted her, but he had claimed her as his own to protect. Emma leaned against the crib, watching Lily sleep peacefully with her little hands curled by her face. Max lay on the floor, eyes half closed, his body relaxed but still listening. She whispered into the quiet room, "I don't know what I would do without you." Max didn't move, but his tail gave a small wag, as if he understood. As days turned into nights and nights into mornings, Emma's home was filled with a new kind of peace. She knew there would always be challenges ahead, teething, tantrums, illnesses, and all the unknowns of parenting. But she also knew she wasn't facing them alone. She had her daughter in her arms and her loyal German shepherd at her side. The memory of that day with the snake no longer haunted her as a moment of fear. Instead, it lived in her heart as proof of something unshakable, the silent vow Max had made to always watch over Lily. And every time she saw him lower his head gently to let the baby touch his fur, or place himself between her and something unfamiliar, she was reminded of that vow. Emma had once thought she was the only protector Lily needed. Now she realized her daughter had two, and one of them walked on four legs with eyes full of loyalty and love. Emma often found herself reflecting on the journey she had lived through with Max and Lily. It had started with small doubts, a little fear, and many questions. Could a big dog and a fragile baby truly live together safely? Could loyalty and instinct overcome the worries people had planted in her mind? The answers had come in ways she could never have imagined, not through words but through moments. And the most powerful moment had been when Max stood guard against danger, proving his love in silence. As Lily grew, Emma began to notice how their bond deepened naturally. Lily's first smiles often came when Max walked into the room. Her first giggles bubbled out whenever he wagged his tail. When she learned to clap, it was Max she clapped for. And when she began crawling, it was toward him that she often crawled. The big German shepherd became her first companion, her first playmate, and her first protector. Emma remembered a particular morning that showed this bond more clearly than ever. She had placed Lily on the floor with her toys while she cleaned up the kitchen. Max, as always, lay close by. Suddenly, Lily tried to pull herself up by holding onto the edge of the couch. Her tiny legs trembled, her grip unsteady. Emma gasped softly, ready to rush over, but Max moved first. He shifted his body carefully, placing himself right next to her, steady and strong. Lily's little hand landed on his back instead of falling to the ground. She used him as her balance, giggling as she stood proudly for a few seconds. Emma's heart swelled at the sight. It was as if Max knew exactly what she needed before she even asked. Moments like that filled Emma's days with gratitude. She often thought back to the shock she had felt the day of the snake. At that time, she had been afraid of what might happen. Now she saw it differently. That day had been the beginning of something beautiful. It had been the start of trust that grew stronger with every shared moment. As weeks turned into months, Emma began to share the story with more people. At family gatherings, she told her relatives how Max had acted faster than she could when danger came close. Her father, once skeptical about having a large dog near a baby, listened with wide eyes and said, "That's no ordinary dog. That's a guardian." Her mother nodded, adding, "It's almost as if he understands he's responsible for her." Even friends who had once warned Emma about keeping Max grew silent when they saw how gentle and protective he was around Lily. Claire, her closest friend, told the story to others, saying, "You wouldn't believe it unless you saw it. He's more careful with the baby than most people I know." Emma smiled whenever she heard this. It made her proud, not just of Max, but of the little family they had become together. One evening, Emma sat in the garden with Lily on her lap and Max lying at her feet. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A light breeze rustled the leaves of the trees and everything felt calm. Lily leaned forward, her small hand brushing against Max's fur. He didn't flinch. Instead, he turned his head slightly so she could reach more easily. Emma whispered softly, "You'll never remember that day, Lily, but I will. And one day I'll tell you how he saved you." The thought stayed in her mind. She imagined the day when Lily would be old enough to understand stories. She pictured herself telling her daughter about how Max had seen the snake before anyone else, how he had planted himself like a wall to protect her, and how his growl had been enough to keep danger away. She knew Lily would look at Max with even more love once she understood the truth. Emma also began to notice how Max's protective nature brought her peace of mind. As a mother, she often carried the weight of endless worries. Would Lily grow up healthy? Would she be safe at all times? Could she keep her safe from everything the world might bring? These questions sometimes kept Emma awake at night. But then she would hear the soft sound of Max's breathing near Lily's crib, steady and reassuring, and her heart would calm. She realized she wasn't facing motherhood alone. Max was her silent partner in this journey. The story of Max and Lily slowly became more than just a private memory. Emma shared it with her neighbors, and soon it spread across their community. People often stopped her on walks to ask, "Is this the baby and the German Shepherd we heard about?" Emma would smile and nod, telling them that yes, it was true, and yes, Max had truly been the hero of that day. Children in the neighborhood began to call Max the gentle giant, and some even asked to pet him when they saw him. Emma allowed it when she felt it was safe, and Max always responded kindly, but she noticed something interesting. No matter how friendly he was to others, his eyes always returned to Lily. It was as if to say, "I'll be kind, but she comes first." As time passed, Emma often wondered about the meaning of that shocking day. It wasn't just about the snake, it was about something deeper. It was about trust, loyalty, and the lessons life gives when least expected. She realized that love comes in many forms. Sometimes it comes through words, sometimes through hugs, and sometimes through the silent act of standing guard when danger appears. Max had shown her that kind of love. One night, long after Lily had gone to sleep, Emma sat on the couch with Max resting his head on her lap. She stroked his fur gently and whispered, "You've taught me something no book ever could. Love doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just stands quietly, watching, protecting, and waiting." Max gave a soft sigh, closing his eyes as if he understood. Years later, Emma knew this story would remain part of her family's history. She imagined Lily as a young girl sitting on her lap, wide-eyed as she heard about the day her dog had saved her from harm. She imagined Lily running through the yard with Max by her side, growing up with a protector who had already proven his loyalty in the most unforgettable way. The moment that had shocked Emma so deeply had turned into the foundation of trust. It taught her that sometimes what begins as fear ends as faith. And as she tucked Lily into her crib each night with Max always close by, she knew that her home was filled with more than love. It was filled with safety, loyalty, and the silent strength of a guardian who asked for nothing in return. The German Shepherd who had once been doubted had become a hero, not just for one day but for a lifetime. And the mother who had once worried about leaving her baby for a few seconds now found peace in knowing she had never truly left her alone. For Lily had Max. And Max, with every beat of his loyal heart, had Lily.